everything that you say becomes like a rule. It is so valued. And so it's the coach that nurtures and decides the athlete that it's going to become in future.
Too many coaches take credit for what the athletes do. The athletes are the ones that do it. You saw at the Boston Marathon, the hug at the finish line. When we got close to the finish, they know that he's going to win. So 6 of us go to the finish line. Person who is in control of the finish line says, one of you can go. Wesley and I looked at each other and I said, Wesley, you go. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. So the two of them had to enjoy that moment.
I wanted to say thank you for sacrificing your moment of celebration for his own brother. It's something you've trained him, you coached him for so long, and it was this moment where you had to make a choice. Only one person could go, and ideally it just seemed like it should have been you, but you were the coach who sacrificed everything as you have been doing for so long as well, and let his brother be with him. So thank you for doing that. That's the sportsmanship. Ron, what a pleasure to have you with us. I have heard of you, I have read about you, and I have read about your coaching achievements particularly. And it is an absolute honor to have you with us today.
Well, thank you very much. I'm always happy to share my knowledge and my insights about, as I always tell people, is I've had the pleasure to be in this business for 53 years now, and I'm at the senior part of my career, and so therefore I'm glad to present my distilled wisdom and share that with as many people as possible, because the overall goal is to make people run faster.
Indeed, as the wine gets older, it gets better. It seems like as you progress in your career, it's just getting wiser and better. And I see that with the results at the Boston Marathon, Chicago Marathon, and many other races, you continue to create champions. And now coaching for more than 5 decades, it sounds itself more than many marathons.
Yeah.
How has all of this been possible? How did you all start the joy of coaching and the interest of coaching long distance running?
Well, as a young man, as a young runner myself, coming out of high school in the United States, I lived in Phoenix, Arizona, and I was recruited to Flagstaff, Arizona in 1968. Well, the 1968 Olympic Games were in Mexico City, so some of the top runners in the United States, being aware of the fact that Mexico City was at altitude, and at that time in the 60s, there was very little knowledge about altitude and altitude training. So therefore, 4 individuals went to Flagstaff, Arizona to train. Billy Mills, who was a 1964 Olympic champion at 10,000 meters, Jim Ryan, who was a young up-and-coming runner in college who had set the world record at 1,500 meters, was training there. George Young, who was 33 years old at the time and was trying to get the Olympic gold medal in the steeplechase, which he ended up getting 3rd, and then a young steeplechaser by the name of Conrad Nightingale. So those 4 people were in Flagstaff, Arizona, and here I was, an 18-year-old young man trying to learn not to be a coach, but to be a better runner. So I learned all I could from them. So then later on in my career, a few years later, I moved to Flagstaff and was chosen as the track and field coach at Northern Arizona University. So at that point, altitude training was becoming a thing, and unbeknownst to me at the time, it would become the thing that everybody needed to do. So, and then a young runner from Kenya came to Flagstaff by the name of Ibrahim Hussein, and Ibrahim Hussein asked me if I would work with him. And so I worked with him, and I learned more from him than he did from me, of course, because he had already won 2 Boston marathons. And so so I was able to be with him, and he was nice enough to call me coach. And So we went and he won the Boston Marathon in 1992 under my direction, but really under our direction. And I would say 90% of it was his direction and 10% of me learning from him. So fast forward, so I started to learn the Kenyan system then, and then
And so just one point I had around then, I guess just before this, as you would have seen the four top runners who came to Flagstaff. I guess around then, Frank Shorter was coming up, and he had become all of a sudden a sensation as well, right? In 1972 and 76, Munich and Montreal gold and silver medals.
Correct.
It just changed the whole scene of running long distance, particularly in the US, isn't it?
Yes, very much so. There you go. Exactly. And then so then after Ibrahim, then a young man from Germany decided he wanted to utilize altitude training. A guy by the name of Dieter Baumann. Dieter Baumann won the Olympic gold medal in 1992, and unfortunately there was some controversy about that he had used drugs and so on. But certainly he was a great runner, and my own personal opinion, having known him very well, right, I think he was sabotaged. I don't think he was a drug user. I think he was sabotaged. Somebody didn't want him to do well. So anyway, but Dieter, I learned a lot about the European system from him because they used a lot more scientific data and doing lactate testing with ear pinching and taking blood samples and so on. So I learned a great deal from him. At that same time, the first man to run under the time of 27 minutes was a guy by the name of Yobis Ondiki, also from Kenya. So he came and trained in Flagstaff. So I had Dieter Baumann, who was one of the best of Europe, and Yobis Ondiki and Ibrahim Hussein sitting in my office regularly, and so we would have roundtable discussions, if you will, and so I learned a great deal at that point. So then I had the blessing of finishing my collegiate career in Flagstaff, and then I was chosen to become the track and field coach at University of Louisville. And so one of my first recruits at University of Louisville was a young man who was from Kenya by the name of Wesley Korir. And I recognized Wesley was running 5,000 meters, and when he was about to graduate college, I said, "You're really not a 5,000 meter runner. You'd be a great marathoner." So he went to Chicago Marathon and ended up in his first race, third at the Chicago Marathon. So obviously he became a very good marathoner, and then I sent him to Flagstaff to train for the summer of 2011, and that's when he got second at Chicago in the fall of 2011, and then in 2012 he won the Boston Marathon under my direction. So then fast forward, Wesley and I became not only great coach-athlete relationship, but we became great friends. And in 2015, my wife and I went to Kenya for the first time and learned about the Kenyan culture and Wesley Korir, and I saw the poverty that was there. And we decided we needed to do something to help the poverty, and Wesley has a heart for the Kenyan people, as I do. So then along comes Wesley's younger brother, who is younger than he is, and Wesley says, "Would you coach my younger brother?" So I said, "Okay, I can do that. Here are the rules and regulations he has to follow." And so, and I think a lot of people have read the article about the two of them and how Wesley and John had a fallout. And the thing was, John was a very young man, and oftentimes young men don't follow, but John quickly came around, and now he's become a great runner. And so the journey continued in that from 2018 to 2025, I've been working with John, and now he is, and we did it right. I mean, we didn't try and. He was running 70 miles a week in miles, and so we could have put him to 140 miles a week right away and broken him. But we decided we're going to do this right and do it in a systematic fashion over years. Specific adaptation to impose demand. So it took a period of time to get him from 70 miles a week. Now he's running 140s, but you don't just go there at one fell swoop. You do it over time and do it right. And so I've been able to follow and do his training, and we build it the right way.
Wow. And I think both of you together did very, very well. Like from the previous experience of coaching Wesley, who was very, very different. Of course, he did very well then. Chicago and then Boston. His personal best, I guess, was at Chicago, if I'm not wrong. At the marathon 206, 13, and then now 14-year younger, John Korir, you were training, and of course he trained slightly differently, and then he was way faster now with everything that happened. Seemed like 202 marathoner that you have produced, and then going to win the Boston Marathon, a race that is not the easiest to even finish for mere mortals like me, for example. and here he was just blazing through it. If anyone saw the race, it just so effortless that he looked as he did the race, Chicago and Boston both. Let's go through this a bit more in detail to understand how training John was different than training Wesley, and how you further evolved as a coach. Of course, you were very experienced already, but how you further evolved as a coach, and how did you take John from 70 miles or so to 140 miles? What were some of the underlying things from training point of view that you were keeping in mind?
Well, Wesley didn't have as much speed as John did, but Wesley, over his college career, we were able to develop his mileage up. And when the first 2 years he was in college, he got injured a lot because he wasn't used to the mileage and wasn't used to the hard surfaces that you have in the United States, and specifically in Louisville. So he got injured. So we modified his training to suit him. People ask me all of the time, what events do you really coach? And I said, I don't coach events, I coach people. So John's career is very different than Wesley's career. Wesley had a internal desire because of what had happened to him and in his youth. He had been he was a very poor child and got the opportunity to come to the United States. And then when he won Chicago and Boston, he was able to go back and make his family more affordable to live. So John had the advantages of not being a very, very poor person, but a middle-class person, if you want to call it that, in Kenya. So it was both a physical preparation, but it was also a mental preparation that he went through, because Wesley was very, very strong mentally early on, because he had to be. His older brother was bitten by a snake and died, and so Wesley was very motivated to change his life in Kenya, and then now changing other lives. So it was a physical thing, but it was also a mental and emotional thing. And Wesley and I, our training system is a biblical training system, okay? We use the Bible a lot in our training, in that it's, we take one day a week off. It's a Sabbath, and you take that day off. And we do things in biblical or godly principles 28-day cycles. Well, it's very simple. The moon works on 28-day cycles. Our Earth works on 28-day cycles. If we look at creation, we can realize what needs to transpire. And so we use that. And as I have gone through the time from 2004 to 2025, I've realized that if you look around, all of the answers are right there. Science is creation, and creation is science. And I asked a biologist friend of mine at one point. I said, "Tell me the science of running." Yeah, I said, "What makes you make the decisions?" He said, "You coaches make the decisions, and then we got to try and prove it right." And I was looking for the science to give me answers. Well, it's actually application works to improve science.
Yeah. And I think the art of coaching is the best science, I would say.
Yeah. Well, and I say regularly to people that there are 3 professions that have their titles the rest of their life. Number 1 is doctor, okay?
Yeah.
Number 2 is reverend, and number 3 is coach.
Coach.
Because coach, once you become a coach, you're respected with that title, and you have to understand that title from then on. And what goes along with that is not only the advantage, but also the responsibility. You got to be careful what you say to the athlete, because the athlete hears everything you say and takes it into their heart.
Yeah, and you're so right. There comes the responsibility also for the coach to continue to evolve, and the pressure I feel as much as it is on the athlete, if not more, it is on the coach as well, because like what you said, everything that you say becomes like a rule, becomes what I mean by rule is from an expression point of view. I mean that it is so valued. And so it's the coach that nurtures and decides the athlete that it's going to become in future, isn't it?
Yes, very much so. And that's what Wesley and I and John have been able to do, in that Wesley is the big brother.
Yeah.
And a valued mentor, as well as, a mental coach to him. And you saw at the Boston Marathon, the hug at the finish line. That was very indicative. And what you didn't see behind the scenes at the finish line, there were about 6 of us that were at the finish line, and that were to welcome him in. When we got close to the finish, they know that he's going to win. So 6 of us go to the finish line. The race directors ask us out. And then the person who is in control of the finish line says, "One of you can go." Wesley and I looked at each other and I said, "Wesley, you go." This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
Yeah.
So the 2 of them had to enjoy that moment.
Yeah.
And that bond between the 2 of them. And now John is taking a responsibility for Transcend. And now he is a role model for all of those 160 students at Transcend Academy. And he lives about 3,000 meters away from them, so he's there. And now Wesley he's not regularly at Transcend, but John and Wesley's parents live about, maybe 1,000 meters away from Transcend. And John now has built a house in the country out near Transcend.
Right. I want to talk about Transcend in a minute, but before that, I wanted to say thank you for sacrificing your moment of celebration for his own brother. It's something you've trained him, you coached him for so long, and it was this moment where you had to make a choice. Only one person could go, and ideally, it just seemed like it should have been you, but you were the one you were the coach who sacrificed everything as you have been doing for so long as well, and let his brother be with him. So thank you for doing that. That's the sportsmanship.
Well, and the part of it is, I think too many coaches take credit for what the athletes do. The athletes
Yeah,
are the ones that do it. And so the moment that Wesley and John could
yeah,
celebrate as a family,
yeah,
uh,
yeah.
that's quite a joy.
Yeah, it indeed is. Now, because you mentioned of the support endeavor back at Transcend, what John, Wesley, and the family are doing. Of course, Wesley has been also busy with his political endeavors. If I'm not wrong, he has been the member of parliament earlier, and as we were discussing backstage, there is a venture, there is a social impact program that you have been part of as well. The through the Transcend Talent Academy.
Yep.
It seems like a future of like it's going to be eaten of future, in my opinion. That's how it looks like. Do you want to talk about it? What exactly that is, and how all of you are trying to create an impact through that academy?
Yeah, yes. The academy is a selection of very poor students, and for them to be chosen to go into the academy, and we have a very strict acceptance program. So once the student is selected into the program, we educate that student for the 4 years that they're there, and eventually they will go on and get their degree, their high school diploma, and their tests in Kenya. It's a Kenya graduation exam, if you want to call it that. Anyway,
Right.
so once the student is selected, it takes about $2,000 per student to educate them for a year. So if you take
Okay.
160 students at $2,000 a year, it's a considerable amount of money. And
Yeah.
and so we raise donations to support them. But the students then get uniforms, they get food, they get dormitories, and they get their education. So it's a real privilege if you are selected into Transcend Academy from that area, because you came with maybe very little, and by the time you graduate from the program, you are educated and you are a good runner and a good person. So that is the idea. And so there are three flags to going once you graduate from Transcend. If you're good enough as a runner, okay, you then can go become a professional runner, as John did, okay?
Okay.
Secondly, you can get a scholarship to the United States, come and run in the United States as Wesley did. Or thirdly, you can then, if because of your education and passing the Kenyan exam, you can get free education to one of the colleges in, like University of Eldoret or whichever university. So then you can come back into the community and be maybe a nurse or a doctor or a lawyer or whatever from your education that you got. So that is a focus of Transcend Academy, and it's building better people with a better education who are great runners. That's the goal, and
Wow.
and so we want to find the next one. Now, one of our first success stories is Wesley Kiptoo, who graduated from Transcend, went to Iowa State, is now training in Flagstaff, Arizona, and just got in the top 10 at the Boston Marathon. That's a success
Wow.
story. And we would like to see that times 160.
Indeed, it will hopefully come true. And just from my understanding, it's only Kenyan runners who can be Kenyan kids who can be part of this program. Correct?
Correct. And they've got to be selected, and primarily they're from the area of Cherangani, which is north of Eldoret. It would be equivalent to, in the United States, a state. Okay, so it would be the state of Alabama, for example, or any one of the different areas in Europe.
Right.
It's a portion of the community, and it's a rural community, mostly farmers, with some smaller cities nearby. Catali and Eldoret's the closest one, and then E10's not very far away.
Right. Got it. And so now this brings me to a very curious question that is around coaching. I got the social impact and the kind of help that the Korir family and you together with the coaches under your guidance are bringing to the country there, and then globally creating world-class athletes.
Yep.
The question that comes here, because the kind of podcast this is, people keep looking for those magic wands to figure how do you create these elite athletes, what goes into their training. Like with the moment we saw John winning the marathon, everybody was curious to know what his training program looks like.
Yeah.
So maybe let's go through this in detail. How do you train these elites? How they become elites like this? I think not many times we get to speak to someone like you to go through the details of coaching, whatever is permissible, of course. It will be fantastic to understand that.
Well, it's been developed over time, and it's scientifically based. One of my earlier mentors was a guy by the name of Dave Martin, who wrote the book Distance Running way back. But he was a scientist, and so I use scientific approach. I use biblical principles, and I use feedback from. And thankfully, at this point in time, we have a number of ways to get data back to us, and I use both Strava and Garmin Connect to get the data on a daily basis. So what happens is John finishes his workout, and they're 7 hours in advance of us in the United States. So he goes, does his workout, which I prescribed. He comes back, he downloads that information, and it comes right to my computer here in Louisville, Kentucky, and then I look at it and analyze it and give him feedback. And so that's the way we do it. And we have developed it over time. And the good thing about it is John is becoming very knowledgeable about his own training. And so he's giving more and more feedback as he trusts me more and I trust him more. Okay. But the difference between, we'll take Chicago and Boston. Obviously Boston is a very hilly course. Okay. And so we had to do more hills. So we prescribed more hill training. And so his tempo runs, instead of being flat tempo runs to run very, very fast, we were trying to end up running tempo runs that finished up a hill and then came down off of a hill the last 3 miles. And as it worked out in Boston, as we all know, he left the group at the hill and never went back. And, and so the training methods are, I call it specific adaptation to impose demands, okay? Specific adaptation, that means he's got to do something in his training that he's going to do in a race, okay? In Chicago, we knew that he was capable and had been for a couple of years to run very, very fast. So in his tempo runs, we took his tempo runs longer. So instead of going a 10 or 12 kilometer tempo run, he extended those out to 20 kilometers and try and hold that pace that he held. And so the feedback is, I see his heart rate at a 12 kilometer, and I say, okay, can we hold that for 15 kilometers? And then I get that data back, I look at it, and I go, okay, it looks like he can hold it for 15 kilometers, but if I back it off just a little bit, he can hold it for 20 kilometers. So it's a matter of using the science and the knowledge that I have and the feedback that John gives me and the application that he and Wesley do on the ground in Kenya. Did that answer your question?
It does, and it raises some more questions now. When we look at various training programs and hear from many coaches. They talk about several training philosophies. There is a polarized training model, there is a pyramidal training model, and within that, various zones that are being considered to be followed, etc., etc. Would you suggest there are one or two type of trainings for sure, or workouts for sure, that will work for almost everyone, regardless of their training status?
Well, generally, it's applicable to everyone. Generally, it's
Right.
applicable. But then you've got individualized training, and that's where it is important to be able to individualize training. I've gotten lots of people who have now asked me to train them, okay? And I won't do that because for me to analyze the data and to communicate with John and 3 or 4 others, it takes a great deal of time. So using the platforms and the training zones and so on, you've got to, it's a very fine dance between science and then intuition. And sometimes you've got to go with intuition. And you know, I try to utilize that and trust my faith that what I'm giving him is God ordained and it's meant to be for him to do well.
Right. Now, we are amateur runners, so we are not elites, we are not semi-elites. We have full day jobs, and in addition,
Sure.
we travel for the love of running.
Yeah.
We'll go to Boston, and if we achieve a sub 3, we'll be super excited, and that will be our gold medal.
Yeah.
But in the time and effort that we can put in, we want to optimize our training. I wanted to understand, are there few philosophies from elite training that we can implement in our training that will help us run faster?
And that's one of the things that I want to do, because I have had so many people reach out to me. I think that what I need to do is, at this point in my career, is maybe take my very specific training that John and other marathoners have done, and then boil it down into a platform that is applicable to all kinds of people. One of my new training people that I'm working with, and this is an insider information. My nephew is wanting to. He's a doctor or a physician's assistant in Indianapolis, Indiana, and he says,
Okay.
Will you help me? And I said, yeah. I said, how much are you running? He said, about 2 miles a day. And if it were a normal person, I said, I can't help you. But for him, I said, I can help you. And so I'm trying to boil this down. And I realized when in doing this that I can use the same principles for him that I use for an elite runner, but I've got to boil it down. And so one of the things that I'm really looking for is I'm looking for a platform that I can build a program around that would be applicable to the normal marathoner. Because there's so many programs out there that that the coaches are trying to make money off of it, and my idea is that I don't want to coach 1,000 runners and get $100 a piece from each one. I'd prefer to build a platform that anybody could pick up and utilize. And I understand there needs to be a cost to that, and those that are designing the programs, that's fine. But my idea is if I can pass that forward to the general population, I would be happy to do that.
Nice. So the question is that if I were to look at running faster, would you suggest, at least from the example of your family member who is running, I hope, more than 2 miles a day now?
I told him that I wouldn't pick him up until he got up to 30 miles a week. And so now he's trying to get to 30 miles a week so that I will provide him a platform. I said, until you get to 30 miles a week, you're not good enough.
Got it. That's the baseline. Now, we are running 30 miles a week, so maybe we can be accepted. Are there a couple of types of training that you would suggest are for sure building blocks of running faster for us. For example, we have time anywhere between 8 hours to 10 hours per week, can't run, also can't take the training load more than that. And we have seen here in India as well as many other places, chasing a sub 3 for a marathon seems like a dream for most of us runners. If we are going to achieve something like that, would you suggest whether it's a easy effort run or a fartlek threshold, what would that be that people start from?
Well, there's a couple of things that I really preach that I've learned from the Kenyan runners. The Kenyan runners on their recovery days run very, very slow. So I think, as a general principle, I think most runners, as they get along in their training, as an amateur runner, let's call them, I think they run their hard runs not hard enough because they run their easy runs too hard. So so you need to concentrate on 3 runs a week that are very hard runs, and in between you need to rest as much as you work. So if you're going to do a tempo run on Tuesday, now you've got to have a recovery day on Wednesday, and then again you can have another workout on Thursday, and then another workout on Saturday. So you can go 3 workouts a week, but those can't be back to back. They've got to have recovery in between them, and you've got to hit all of the different energy systems. You've got to use the aerobic system, the anaerobic system, and then the speed system to some extent, so that you can carry that over time. So those are the 3 principles. But in general, as you build a program, it's got to have the tempo training, because you've got to be able to carry that lactate level and be able to bail out that lactate, if you will. And I use the lactate as a example. I say, imagine you're sitting in a boat, and as that boat has got a hole in the bottom of it, you can bail out the water to a certain extent, but once the hole gets too big, you can't bail out the water anymore. And that's sort of the way the lactate system is. Once you get that boat too full of water, it's going to sink. And so that's the way lactate is. If you get the lactate levels up too high, you're going to fail. So the key is to work in the zone between the 2 lactate levels and push your upper lactate level as far as you can. So if you find that you're able to run your tempo runs at a certain pace, then you extend that over a longer pace, okay? And that's applicable whether you're a 4-hour marathoner or you're a 2-hour marathoner. It's the same principle, okay? And the same thing is true if you aren't comfortable at 8-minute mile pace. At some point in that, if you're going to run a 4-hour marathon, you got to run 8-minute mile pace at some point. So to go out and run 10-minute mile pace all the time does no good. So at some point, you've got to have specific adaptation to impose demand. You're going to run 8-minute mile pace, or you're going to run 440 pace, but you've got to be able to do that. Did that answer your question?
Very well, very well. Now, it seems like we have also been told that the easy effort, which you said, most of us amateur runners don't take it easy. The recovery runs seem still too fast. The easy runs still seem fast, and then the hard workout we can't do as hard. Now, what, in your opinion, is the role of easy effort run? Not recovery run as much, but easy effort run. Is that something that helps build the large aerobic base, and that's critical for me to run faster later for a longer period of time?
The aerobic training is very important, and my general rule of thumb is that you need to run 10% more than the time-wise than you're going to run in your marathon. Well, that's not applicable if you're a 4-hour marathoner, so you've got to break that down and break it down into maybe 10,000 meters, okay, and then be able to run it for 10,000 meters at an 8-minute mile pace. So I think it's important that you get the aerobic base, which is going to be important, particularly capillary involvement. You've got to build the capillaries out there, and as a young runner, that's particularly important, because if you're a 20-year-old, you can build capillarization very easily. As a 40-year-old, you're probably not going to be able to do that as easily because your body just isn't producing the way it used to.
Yeah, yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. The role of mitochondria is so important, and that needs to be uh, kept in account for sure. Now, coming back to John, will it be possible for you to give us a glimpse of how his typical training week could look like?
Well, it's very simple. In that a typical running week for him is on Sunday he takes off. So Monday he comes in with a recovery run, which is very slow. Tuesday generally is some sort of a track workout. We've just built a new track at Transcend, and they're having their first competition there today. Actually,
Oh, wow.
and when I say first competition, the regional championships are at Transcend Academy. So we built a track there and it's being utilized. So he goes and uses the track and runs a track workout of some sort, whether it's thousands, 400s. Last week he ran 24 by 400 meters. Okay, so he's doing a lot of that kind of work. And then in addition to that, he's takes a recovery day on Wednesday again. And oftentimes, because of the amount of mileage that he has to do, we're doing 2-a-day training. And then on Thursday, generally it's a tempo run, and the tempo run is that's a very strong run for us. And he'll do sometimes 2 runs, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. One of those 2 being a hard tempo run, and he's doing his tempo runs now somewhere in the neighborhood of 18 to 22 kilometers of a tempo run at 440 mile pace. So, but that's come over time. That's come over time. I mean, we didn't start out that way, and people look at that and they go, "Wow, I need to go do that." Well, no, John didn't do that when he started. He's there now, But in order to do what he wants to do, that's what you've got to run. He's got to run 437 mile pace for 26 miles. That's not an easy thing to do. So you can't do that until you've done it in training. Now, he's not going to go do that whole tempo run out to 26 miles, but he's going to do it for a portion of that. So tempo run on Thursday, Friday another recovery day, and then Saturday is a long run, and generally that's between 30 and 42 kilometers of training, and it's generally 2 hours and 15 minutes of training, and then Sunday,
In one session.
in one session.
Got it. And so it's not a very easy run for sure.
No, but
Got
it
it,
doesn't
got
have to
it.
be fast. It just needs to be consistent, and he needs to have his heart rate at a point that is below the lactate level, because we don't want him developing lactate in the aerobic session. So you do specific adaptation to impose demand. What are you trying to do in that workout? We're trying to build aerobic capacity. So in there, you want to work that zone that is aerobic capacity.
Got it. And do you also then focus on cross training, stretching, massages,
All of that.
strength training,
And
etc.?
that's one of the things that we've been able to do. And that, he's very good friends with Kipchoge, and Kipchoge uses the gym work, and John has implemented the gym work, and I think on Instagram people have seen him and he's doing the gym work and there, and that's been very beneficial, not only to his training, but his strength training as well. His form has gotten much better because of that gym training that he's done. And then through a situation at Transcend, he's been able to his relationship with ASICS, they've been able to hire a massage therapist at Transcend, and so he has full-time massage therapy available to him, which is great. One of the things that they don't have in Kenya is there's a problem with having ice baths there. So we're trying to work out a way so that we can have ice baths available for him, because that's important in training as well. So, the regeneration portion of it. And then, Mortine has been very generous in providing electrolyte replacement and so on. So that's been a very much of a help as well. So we're trying to add more and more things that aren't available in Kenya to his training program, and so we've been trying to do those kinds of things to enhance his auxiliary training as well as his regular training.
Beautiful. I was asking all these questions also because here in India, one of the things at the elite level of training, we keep thinking about why India as a country has improved in almost everything except our timing improvements in the marathon. We set the national record in 1970s.
Yep.
And that was 2:12. And we have not gotten any close to it. Our winners currently at the national level in the country in the marathon are at around 2:16. They're just not getting faster than that. In between, we did see half marathon timing at around 1 hour, few seconds. And most of other marathoners are between 1 hour, 1 minute, 1 hour, 2 minutes. But the marathon timing is not coming below 2:16. And who better than you to talk through it as to what could be happening? What are some of the things you think, if you were to advise, we should be looking at differently?
Well, and this is a very peripheral look at it, but
Right.
specifically, the general rule of thumb is double your half marathon time and add 10 minutes. So
Right.
It looks to me like if you're running 1 hour for a half marathon, you should be 2:10 area for the marathon. That's a general rule of thumb. So as a peripheral look at it, I would say, I would say probably that area of tempo training and extending tempo training over time, pushing them beyond maybe 10,000 meters of training at tempo level to 12 and 14 and 16 gradually over time would be my specific peripheral look at it.
Yeah.
Because most people do the long runs, that's not a problem. And they're more than glad to do the track work. But the area that people have a tendency to shy away from is those tempo runs, because there's nothing easy about a hard tempo run.
That is true. That is true. That is true. And it can be very painful.
Yeah. And the other part of that is, it is important to I think, I don't know in India, do you have running groups? Because running groups is important to have someone who's going to push you on those tempo runs specifically. And sometimes you have to have two people that are helping you push. So if you've got a talented runner and you have several other not so talented runners, they have to do it in relay form, and that you're going to run a 15 kilometers, so you have someone run the first 7 kilometers with you, and then you have someone else run the last 8, because then they can push you along the way.
Yeah. No, running groups do exist at all levels, including at the elite levels, and they do operate in smaller groups. We are seeing some good successes at mid distance and shorter distance level of running. Somehow at the marathon, it's still not there, and one of the reasons we think could be that as they start to become a little senior, they get a government job because of their performance at the shorter distances, and that might just bring some set of complacency that they do not need to work as hard. And also, running marathon doesn't bring a lot of cash here in India, and so the motivation monetary wise is marginal as well. That could be another reason. But as you said, the training philosophies, as what you suggested, could just be peripheral, and something more specific needed to be seen in detail. And my question was more just at a macro level, since we were discussing about elite training. That's why I asked this question. It's been a pleasure so far discussing your journey, John's journey, and everything else that you have contributed. I think this is one of the most prolific conversations I have had in my podcast journey of last 4.5 years. And thank you so much for making it very insightful, emotional, and it coming directly from the heart. So thank you so much for this detailed conversation.
I just want to say, how much I appreciate it, and the more that we can get information out to the general public, and what's going on in Charangani, and what Wesley and John are doing collectively, along with all of those that are around him, the better off we can do in helping the world in general. The world is a very complex place right now, and we need to make that a place of, and marathon running, it's all level at the start line. And the journey along the way gets a little rough, but everybody eventually is going to get to the finish line. And so it's our job to make that journey as fun as we can and as endurable as we can. And my philosophy towards marathon training, as it is in life, for those much is given, much is expected. I've been given much, and much is expected from me.
Thank you. And thank you for having that mindset. And I think these are the things and these are the conversations and experiences that keep all of us going. And I think this is the beauty of sport, that we all connect. This is the beauty of sport, that we all speak, and we are speaking now here, understanding from your journey. And from the entire conversation of last 50 minutes, one of the things that I'm taking away, there is a need for all of us to do a little more than what we are doing, and we all can do a little more than what we are doing. And thank you for showing that way to us.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.